Alright, so moving on to the CSO's sales process. The CSO sold rough diamonds to wholesalers. Some wholesalers chose to sell them to the firms that specialized in cutting and polishing, while the remaining wholesalers chose to retain ownership through the cutting and polishing process and pay the fee for this work. To maintain control of the diamond industry, De Beers selected their buyers, who are known as site holders, based on their loyalty and commitment to only buy from De Beers, who offered their diamonds at non-negotiable prices. And to purchase the diamonds from the CSO, the site holders have to go to London. The CSO had the power to choose whom to sell to, the amount of diamonds to sell, and to set the prices. So there was this thing that De Beers did where they put together a box of diamonds that contained a range of different quality stones, which was somewhat a strategy that allowed them to sell less desirable diamonds in the same box as top-of-the-line gems. And if a buyer refuses to purchase a box of diamonds, they might not be invited to purchase again. If a site holder were to purchase directly from a mine, De Beers would instantly exclude them from their value chain. And sometimes De Beers owned the mine or obtained a contract for that mine's output so that if a buyer declines to purchase from De Beers, they would end up without a source. Which is kind of a very smart move from De Beers, as the fear of being driven out of the business is what had their buyers returning. So every fifth Monday, the diamond dealers would go to 17 Charterhouse, which is in London, where the CSO would provide them with a box of diamonds that had a set price, where they could either accept or reject, as the CSO left no room for negotiating. And over the years, the CSO would charge about 10 to 15% on the cost of diamonds for fulfilling various functions. Now, let's talk about stockpiling. So the global demand for diamonds was relatively inelastic, and it mostly depended on the use of diamonds in engagement rings. However, the global supply of diamonds depended on new discoveries and new mining investments, so it was unpredictable, which meant that the price of diamonds could shift greatly. So around the 1930s, De Beers realized that they could influence the world price of diamonds by stockpiling them during periods of surplus and reduce their inventory during periods of shortage. In this process, De Beers were able to ensure that their mining operations were able to maximize their profits. And since De Beers stockpiled diamonds that they purchased from mines, they were able to ensure that competing mining companies achieved price stability at escalating price levels. If you look at De Beers' history, you would find that they used their stockpile as a way to punish mines that dealt directly with wholesalers or cutters. So, for example, if a mine left the cartel, De Beers would flood the market with the quality of diamonds produced by that mine. De Beers took that action against several countries several times. De Beers also used their stockpiles to limit speculative build-up inventories. However, the development of new mines that were outside De Beers' control meant that De Beers' ability to control global supply through its stockpiling was slowly decreasing. De Beers once controlled 80% of the world's supply of rough stones. In 1998, it accounted for nearly two-thirds of the supply. Today, however, production from their mines give them around 45% share, and its overall market share is around 55%, but that's only because of their contract to sell Russian stones. Furthermore, the economics of stockpiling changed, and in the 1990s, the increase in mines and production led to large increases in De Beers stockpiles, which led to De Beers facing increases in their carrying costs, augmented by high interest rates. Analysts even pointed out the escalating costs of De Beers' stockpiling system, stating that their practice of soaking up the world's surplus diamond supply by serving as the buyer of last resort is tremendously expensive, and that De Beers had to spend billions to stockpile diamonds in a vault, collecting dust instead of interest, and that in the past 4 years, De Beers company's profits had stayed flat. The stock market did not appreciate the value of the stockpile, as it determined De Beers' share price, and if De Beers were to reduce their stockpiling role, then the value of their shares might be expected to rise or increase. Alright, so moving on to cutting and polishing. Now, firms that specialized in cutting and polishing developed a highly skilled workforce. Now, those firms had the tendency to gather in specific cities or regions where these skilled workers could be found. Those firms had to purchase from De Beers wholesalers, or they would risk getting excluded from De Beers value chain, which led to them being committed to De Beers. That didn't, however, stop some firms from operating outside of De Beers chain. However, those firms were immediately blacklisted by De Beers. By the early years of the 21st century, governments that had diamond mines would publicly advertise those mines to attract firms that specialized in cutting and polishing in order to create jobs and to increase their tax base and export earnings. Like back in 2004, August 28th, to be more specific, the Botswana Export Development and Investment Authority issued a request for consultants to undertake a study to determine the practicality of developing value-added activities in their diamond industry. Now, that study had a few objectives, which were number one, to establish the potential for increasing cutting and polishing for diamonds mined in Botswana to generate further revenue from rough diamonds. Number two, to identify opportunities for establishing a jewelry sector. Number three, to analyze the global and regional markets for the industries. Number four, to perform a SWOT analysis and benchmark Botswana with competitors for the investment. And finally, to profile key diamond cutting and polishing and jewelry companies and pinpoint key individuals within companies that play an important role in the site selection process. Thank you so much.
Okay, the first thing I'll be talking about is going to be the jewelry making and retail. Okay, so some jewelry makers focus on the mass market. So this is like when they copy or replicate specific designs. They're like famous designs, but they copy them for a cheaper price. These designs aren't as expensive, but they're for everyone. On the other hand, you have other designers that create specific and unique things for their elite customers. This is more of a labor intensive job, and of course, it's more costly. The size of the rocks determine its price. An example of a high end jewelry brand would definitely be Tiffany or Harry Winston. Some people are prepared to pay so much money for a certain style or glamour, and these are like more common with higher class brands. The beer started to move to like online sales to adapt to the market as they weren't really in on this new online thing. So they moved to their online sales, and in 2004, online sales hit a massive $1.9 billion. That's double what they did in 2003. So they adapted to this new trend, which made them so much more money. Okay, so in the 1930s, De Beers created a very, very strong and brilliant marketing ploy that basically convinced the world that diamond symbolizes love. They did so by creating a very small and simple slogan: Diamond is forever. They started this marketing campaign by creating this slogan and just giving diamonds to all the Hollywood actresses and just making them wear their products to like show how elite diamonds are. So that's it. That's all that happened. And ever since that, the public just ate this idea up. The public loved this idea. The beers uh, made diamond a necessity. Like it created a need for diamonds, which was brilliant. Like it basically made everyone think that if they want to give their loved ones a gift and they really want to show them how much they love them, then they should just give them diamonds. And ever since that, business started booming. Everyone started giving their loved ones gifts and tried saving up to give them to get their loved ones diamonds, just so they can be like the Hollywood actresses, and just so they can show them how much they love them. Because diamond is a very rare rock, and by giving someone something rare, you basically show them like their worth, basically. So yeah, this started uh, in the US. 51% of their sales were in the US, but then the whole world started noticing it, and then their sales moved to Europe, Japan, China, then later on the rest of the world.
Moving on to the antitrust law in the USA. The antitrust law is a collection of federal and state government laws that regulate the conduct and organization of business corporations and are generally intended to promote competition for the benefit of consumers. Moving forward to the antitrust law in Europe, the European antitrust policy is developed from two central rules set out in the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. First is the Article 101 of the treaty prohibits agreements between two or more independent market operators which restrict competition. And the second one is from Article 102 of the treaty prohibits firms that hold a domination position on a given market to abuse that position. For example, by charging unfair prices, by limiting production, or by refusing to innovate to the prejudice of consumers. So I'm pretty sure you guys are asking yourselves, how is this related to the antitrust law and the consumer behavior? In our case, of course. So as we all know, we studied the sensory market, and it basically occurs when companies think carefully about the impact of sensation on our product experiences. For example, think about diamond experts when they examine a piece of diamond. They generally rely on using two human senses, which are touch and sight. So, in this case, the antitrust law, as mentioned in the case, new technologies were emerging that the creation of synthesized diamonds is now a possibility, which only means that the chances of those diamonds being 100% authentic is extremely low. So the government introduced antitrust laws regarding this issue, which will later on help consumers choose the right seller rather than be fooled with a diamond that isn't one. So how does this tackle the psychological aspect? We all know that diamonds are very expensive. So imagine how you'd feel if you realized that the diamond you just purchased and very happy with, let's say it costs you around $2,000, isn't 100% made of diamonds or is partially fake. I know I would be devastated. Moving on to the post-purchase dissonance, also known as the consumption guilt, occurs when a consumer has doubts or anxiety regarding the wisdom of a purchase made. Think about the guilt the consumer goes through after making a purchase of something that is expensive. Now I want you to anticipate the extra guilt he feels when knowing this purchase was completely useless and went to something that is fake.